Yeah, good morning, friends, as usual, except for Dr. Annu and Sarah now. I request the rest of you to keep your mics muted and your videos switched off so that we have enough bandwidth to keep going. Morning again to all, and we're very fortunate this morning to have Dr. Annu with us to give us a talk on the Sunderbans, the fauna, flora, and the people. And we couldn't think of anybody more qualified to do this than Dr. Annu, who's actually written a book on the Sunderbans, as you already know. And thanks to Sarah, how this all started was once we were having a field trip in January to the Sunderbans, and a couple of weeks after the trip was finalized, the group decided, Sarah gave me a call and said, why don't I ask my friend to give us a talk? And that's how it all began about 6 weeks ago. And here we are. Kindly, thank you, Sarah. And I now invite Sarah to formally introduce Dr. Annu.
Hi, good morning, everybody. It's my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Annu. As Vijay said, I actually signed up for the Sunderbans trip, which is happening next month. And I mentioned to my brother who was visiting that I'm going to the Sunderbans. I need to learn something about the Sunderbans before I go. And he said, oh, well, there's a Sunderbans expert who lives in Besant Nagar. I said, who's this? He said, a very good friend of mine. So I met Dr. Annu, who had recently moved to Madras or moved back to Madras, I'm not sure, living in Besant Nagar, sure enough. And it's been wonderful to get to know her, begin to read her book, and she graciously agreed to give us this talk today on the Sunderbans. She is, I've come to learn, the very first anthropologist to go to the Sunderbans and write about it. So that is, in itself is quite an achievement. Dr. Annu, this very small biographical background, I believe, was born in Calcutta, raised in Calcutta, and went to Sunderbans as early as at the age of 8. And ever since then has been going back, which one can quite imagine why. But then ended up making it also an area of her work and scholarship and friendship and community, and a lot of other things have grown out of that. So she's very much from the Sunderbans as well as from Calcutta as well as from other places. I'll read a slightly formal biography. Dr. Annu Jalais is an environmental anthropologist working on the human-animal interface. She'll explain to us what that means. Environmental justice, religious identity, caste and migration, particularly in Bangladesh and India. She authored Forest of Tigers. She co-authored with Joya Chatterjee, The Bengal Diaspora, Rethinking Muslim Migration. So she has located herself in that area, which is both part of India and Bangladesh, and written. She has taught across the world in some of the top universities and is presently teaching in Korea. So I'll leave it at that, and Annu, take it from there.
Good morning, everyone. Such an honor to have been asked to give you a talk. Thank you, Vijay, and thank you, Sarah, for inviting me. And I look forward to introducing the Sundarban to you. However, I'm an anthropologist, social, cultural, environmental. And so I came to tigers a little late in my life. I'm not a biologist. And so, you know, the flora and fauna bit will be a little light. It'll be mainly on people in the Sundarban and what they think about tigers, how they live with tigers. So I shall introduce my work to you right away. Can you all see my screen? Yes, you can put a thumbs up.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, great. So as Sarah mentioned, I went to the Sundarban first when I was 8 because my parents were working in an NGO, an Indian NGO called Seva Sangho Somiti. And my father incidentally built the first cyclone shelter there with his friend Shobhanlal Mukherjee. And Shobhanlal Banerjee. And so basically, we had comings and goings with the Sunderbans. And I heard a lot of stories. One of my neighbors, because we lived in Shalkia, which is in Howrah, one of my neighbors was actually a fisherman working in the Sundarban, and he told me all kinds of amazing stories. So those stories and me going there as a child and noticing a few things, we were in a family where half the family was Hindu, like one brother was Hindu, the other brother was Christian. And we were there during the Christmas season, and there were a lot of kirtans in the name of Jesus. And kirtans are all night singing and dancing, bhakti infused ceremonies. And there was a priest there, a Catholic priest, who sang and danced passages of the Bible. And amongst his musicians, there were Hindus, Muslims, Christians, everybody. Then one of the brothers, we were there in January too, he said, now it's the Bon Bibi Johura Nama. And it's like a Bon Bibi Puja for the Hindus. So it's this superpower that was venerated by people. And so, when you're 8, you think of life as a wonderfully colorful place where you have all these people having festivals, and it's quite nice. It was only later that after 92 actually, that I thought that there was perhaps something a little strange in these interactions, and I wanted to go back. But something else had happened before. I had gone there as a high school student with my school to learn about the flora and fauna. And I'm going to tell you the story because that too was a reason why I wanted to return to the Sundarban and do my research there. So as Sarah was telling you, I'm at Creer University. And I'm also in other places, very happy to be an adjunct fellow at the Dakshin Foundation, for example, in Bengaluru. So today, this is how I've sort of thought about showing you. So, it's the largest mangrove delta in the world. 65% of it lies in Bangladesh, 35% lies in India. As you can see at the bottom, the NASA maps are incredibly amazing to look at. I did fieldwork there between 1999 and 2001. When I was there for 2 years, I was teaching in the local school and doing house-to-house surveys and talking to people. And then I've returned every year, except during the pandemic. But I was there in February of this year, where I stayed a few days and caught up with what is happening. So it's a region I have known for quite a while now. So as you can see, the inhabited islands are the ones in green. And sorry, the ones not in green, and the forest islands are the one in green. Now, there has been no encroachment on forest islands because it's very difficult to do that if you are not 500 people. Because to be able to take over an island or take over land in the Sundarban, you need to build a mud wall so that the water does not wash away the island twice a day, like it does the forest islands, okay? So twice a day, the forest islands are covered in water. You're going to see that, in high tide, you just see the top of trees and everything is underwater. And so twice a day. So to make it habitable, the British had to build these mud walls called bandh in Bengali, or bunds in English. They're sort of embankments with mud. And they keep the saltwater, brackish water out, because these rivers are saltwater, which is why when there's a cyclone, it is really terrible, because not only do your freshwater ponds get salty, and this kills all the fish in your ponds, but it also means that your land becomes uncultivable for 3 to 5 years, okay? Which is why it is always something very dangerous. Not only does the roof of your thatched mud house gets blown away, but basically everything around you dies. If you go 3 days to a week after a cyclone, it just stinks, because you see dead fish all over, you see trees dead, you see all of the crops lying in the fields completely rotting. It's a very, very sad sight. And there's no fresh water because everything has been contaminated with this salt water. Okay, so it's one of the harshest terrains on the face of the earth. So 25,000 square kilometers of water and land. As I said, water and land, not just because the forested islands get covered, but also because the land literally moves. And this is why I was telling you, NASA pictures, if you compare them, even in the last 20 years, you see how islands have moved. And I would recommend you read The Hungry Tide by Amitav Ghosh, because he talks about it, So during high tide, this is what it looks like. And these are the two examples of new metaphoric roots. Ones which are called stilt roots, and the others which are like spears, and I forget what they're called, but basically they're called new metaphoric roots because they help the trees breathe. Because otherwise, this sort of marshland is completely wet, right? So the trees need to breathe, and this is ways in which they found, they have adapted. So it's a very interesting vegetation, and you have a lot of trees there, like the keora, which is used to cure from various ailments such as stomach aches and all of that. It's also used as fragrant water in many dishes. You have a lot of trees that are used for tanning purposes and for furniture. So I don't have the names, but basically it is biodiversifically talking, it's a very, very interesting space. So the tide water washes twice a day. And basically this is why it is called Bhatir Desh. Bhati means low tide, or this is why, Amitav Ghosh refers to it as the tide country. And it has some very, very unique non-humans. You're going to watch, when you're on the boat, you're going to look out for big animals. But as you get to the jetty, try and take a look at the mud, because you're going to see a lot of mud skippers, these tiny little fishes that jump around. They're not as big as in Malaysia or Singapore, but they're about a finger long, or, some of them are a little more than a finger long, so you might miss them, and they look the same color as mud, but they have very puffed cheeks and they jump around, and sometimes you find them in trees. So these are fish that have developed skills of staying out of water by keeping water in their gills, or in their puffed cheeks for very long. You have wild boar, you have a lot of deer, you have crabs, and these crabs cause havoc in the bunds or the mud embankments that I was telling you about, because they make all kinds of burrows, and it sort of makes the mud wall very fragile over time. So you have to rebuild it, or you have to basically stack more mud on it and all of that to keep it strong. Lots of macaques. So these are the main animals. You have a lot of birds also, migratory birds as well as native birds. You're going to see them when you will be there. And so, yeah. So this is, as I was telling you, the particularity of these islands is that they move. Islands are protected by these mud walls that you can see here. So sometimes people have two mud walls because one keeps getting washed away by the river, and so they have to build another one inside. And as you see in the first photo here of the man with the little girl, those spaces then become fisheries for tiger prawn, okay, what we call in Bangla Bagda chingri. So this is what happens when mud walls break. You can see that the river water just comes in, and and is very destructive. Yeah, remember that this is not fresh water, this is salt water, because the sea is not very far away. And so twice a day you have the tides. And this is also what makes these embankments very fragile. Okay, so what I noticed when I lived there, apart from people telling me which political party, the person I was going to meet belonged to. So that became something very interesting. People always tell me, so and so, he lives inside and he is RSP. So and so, he lives along the bank and he is, the TMC was just starting off at that time. But and the RSP is the Revolutionary Socialist Party, which even though was part of the left front, actually in the Sunderban always fought with the left, with the CPIM and all of that. They had many different groups. It's a place where, politically speaking, people are very, very, very charged. And you routinely have police stations burned down. And, when I was there, you had a lot of law and order issues with dacoits. And so Bangladesh says that its dacoits come from India. India says that the dacoits come from Bangladesh. Basically, very difficult to catch them because they go through the maze of rivers between India and Bangladesh. So people who live inside the islands are usually landowners, and usually they're more protected from the vagaries of the weather. Those that live on the peripheries of islands are usually fishermen. Now, this is changing with the Sunderbans suddenly becoming a highly touristic place. And so a lot of fishermen have sold their little patch of land to tourist lodge owners who usually come from Calcutta. Okay, so they don't live there, but they build all these tourist lodges along the banks. So there's a reversal of very, very poor people who suddenly become very rich, and what happens in the Sundarban, which is also something I had noticed, 23 years ago when I was doing field work, was that anybody who becomes rich, quote unquote, anybody who makes money, all the school teachers, for example, who had a regular salary and who earned, 5, 6, 7 times more than people there. Anybody who had made it big in the tiger prawn industry would leave the Sundarban and buy a plot of land in the outskirts of Calcutta. It was as if living there, you had to be egalitarian and you had to share. So if you made money, you just left. Okay, so not much investment in this place by anybody. There are some NGOs, and but otherwise, as I said, people leave as soon as they make some money. Okay, so those who live along the outskirts of the island go twice a day. And sometimes they go for a week or more, 10 days, to catch crabs. So they live on these little boats, and they have a long string. And at the end of the string, there are pieces of fish meat that they tie up, and they lower it. There's a tiny brick also. They lower it, and then they come back after an hour or two, and usually there's a crab holding on to that. So you just have to pull the string, and all the crabs are dangling on it. And then you, with a small little net, you just pick each crab. So you have to also know exactly these creeks. And your boat, I don't think, will be able to enter inside these tiny creeks, because you can only do so in very high tide for the big boats. And the small boats, you need to know when to get out, because otherwise, if the tide goes down and you've not left that creek, you're going to get stuck there. And this means you're completely at the mercy of any lurking tiger, crocodile, anything. So for me, what was interesting was that when I went there, and yeah, it's very difficult. It used to be very difficult to get to that place because in those days, this is Canning, which you're going to cross probably at Bashanti. Bashanti has a bridge, Canning has a bridge, both places had no bridge. And this is how we had to cross the river. So part of it, we had to walk in very, very slimy mud and then take a boat to be able to take the train back or the bus back from Bashanti. But now there are two bridges, so it is much easier. So what happened when I went to the Sunderbans first, people kept telling me, you need to go to the forest. And I told them, but I'm not a tourist and I'm not a biologist. I've come to write about your history. And they'd say, what will you be able to write about us if you don't know about our tigers? So I kept saying, I'm really not interested, because for them, it was something that they needed to talk about every time there was somebody new in the region, because they knew that people were attracted to come and visit that place because of tigers. And I said, no, let's talk about your rituals or your economy or whatever. And they kept saying, you need to go to the forest. You need to learn about our tigers. And on the other hand, I was also hearing about all these people that had been killed by tigers when they went to the forest, or when tigers had swum over and come into the village. So I wasn't too keen. And one day, the lady in whose house I lived, she said, we're going to get wood. Why don't you come with me and see for yourself? So I said, fine, thanks, I'll come to the forest. And so we were 5 of us. She left me on the boat, and when we reached the forest, then they all got off and started to, it was mainly, dried wood and collecting branches that had fallen off. They were not really chopping trees down. So they were collecting that, and I found the time a little, standing still a little boring. So I got off the boat and I started to take photos. And when this lady came back, she had a look of utter horror on her face. And she said, just get on the boat now. And, don't get down. You shouldn't tempt the tiger. And so I'm going to tell you why, what this meant. And in a lot of the tiger stories that they had told me, they kept saying that basically they knew how to charm tigers. Tigers were very cantankerous animals, but also very compassionate. That tigers were actually misunderstood creatures. And slowly, I started to, because I said, I've seen tigers in zoos. And they said, you have no idea. That's not a tiger. That's not our tiger. That's something else. You can talk to our tigers. And as I started writing down what they were saying about tigers, I realized that they had an understanding of wild animals that wasn't mine. It was something that Philippe Descola, a French philosopher and anthropologist, has called animistic. He worked with the Achuars in the Amazon, and there they spoke a lot about jaguars and how people could turn into jaguars, and jaguars could turn into humans and all of that. And so he basically says that in different parts of the world, people understand animals in a different way. And so this is why it's perhaps better to call them non-humans. And this is why I started using the term non-human in the context of South Asia. And so, So I was interested in these stories of tigers, and they said, our tigers actually are migrants. They come from Southeast Asia. They traveled all over the place. They were hunted for their bones and their skin. And so they walked, through China and Taiwan and Japan and Singapore. And then finally they came to this godforsaken Sunderban where nobody kicked them out because there was nobody. And so they started living here. But the brackish salt water, the cyclones, all of that made them cantankerous. And the fact that they were being hunted down and they had to make this long trip. This is why our tigers are so angry. And this is why we are angry too. So this was one story. Another story, one night I was walking with a troupe to go and see their all-night theatrical play. And as I was coming back with some of the young men from the village in where I was living, this young man says, "So what are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I've come to write about your history." And he says, "Aren't we just tiger food for you lot?" So this also was something that stayed with me. And I said, so as I stayed there, I realized that there had been a big incident between 77 and 79, where many people had been killed. And it's the Morichapi massacre. And so I was keen to learn more about it because I had never heard of it. And so what had happened was that Jyoti Basu, who was then the leader of the opposition, had promised that should the left front win, or should his party, and then they created the left front, win, they would house all of the East Bengali refugees in a place called Morichapi, which was an island, which was not a forested island. It was an island with coconut trees and the jhaugach, which is a tamarisk tree, not to mix up with the tamarind. So a tamarisk tree and the coconut tree. And so it was an island that was being cultivated for revenue. It was the only island which wasn't forested and which wasn't inhabited. And so he had said that probably they would be rehoused there and all of that. And when he came to power in December 77, basically they forgot their promise, but you had 35,000 refugees coming from Central Asia, where they had Central India, where they had been put in Chhattisgarh and other places, north of Andhra Pradesh and Madhya Pradesh. They all started coming back because these are Bengali refugees who wanted to stay in West Bengal. And they stayed there for a year and a half. They built some tube wells, they had schools. There are many photos showing how they basically got that island, into shape. But Indira Gandhi thought that it was a bad idea because I think in 73, the Sundarban was considered a sanctuary. And so she told the government to send in the police, and it was encircled. A lot of people died because they couldn't get fresh water. They died of disease. And from the victims' families, and they have books, there were more than 200 people that were killed. The government always says that there were just 2 people that were killed. But so it has become, it became something that was important in the minds of the islanders. Yeah, it came 20 years after that event. And so they said, they gave precedence to tigers over us. And that's when that got to the head of tigers. Tigers started thinking that they were first-class citizens and we second-class. And so this is why that guy had said, don't you think we're just tiger food? Because that had been the idea. This is a place for tigers and humans. And as I said, humans cannot really take over the forested islands, apart from chopping down trees. And that too, they can't do for very long. It has to be during low tide. And, so apart from those moments, they can't really take over a new forested island. Yeah. So this had been an event that had been there, and people kept saying, tigers used to listen to us, and tigers were compassionate because they knew we too had a history of migration, because they were brought by the British 200 years, 250 years before our date to chop down the forest and make this place a revenue generating place. It never really worked out as per plans because the revenue generated from the Sundarban wasn't that big. So at some point they sort of left it. But these people had been brought from all over. A lot of Adivasis from, Chota Nagpur Plateau had been brought, different, all kinds of caste groups, but mainly lower caste groups came and lived here. So whether they a lot of Christians, Muslims, Hindus, all together. And they had, they had tiger charmers, people who could, and basically you weren't born into a family of tiger charmers, you could take on the identity of a tiger charmer. And for that, you need to be a daredevil. Now, I had read about tiger charmers in a lot of the gazetteer writers, and they had sort of talked mockingly about these men, saying they are superstitious. The people are superstitious, so this is why they don't go into the forest without these guys. But they're the first ones invariably to be killed. So then I spoke to these tiger charmers and I said, it seems that there's a lot of that, that you guys get killed. And they say, yeah, thankfully we get killed, not the people we take. And so I was interested to know more about this. And they said, we take on the identity of a tiger, and a tiger is very possessive about its space. So it doesn't like to see another tiger. So yeah, when we go to the forest, we are the first ones to get killed. So when they go to the forest, the first thing they do is they crouch on the land and they put their hands on a little mound of earth and they say their charms. And these charms are supposed to make the tiger either feel drowsy, send the tiger away as if his body was on fire, make the tiger ticklish. So you have all kinds of charms. And so once they've done their charms, and as I said, they're the first ones to get off, and they say these charms for 5 minutes all alone while everybody else waits in the boat. Once they have decided that the space is safe, people get off and collect honey or collect fish or chop trees. And once they have what they have, they put it back on the boat, and the tiger charmers' responsibility is to cut the charm. Because if you don't, the tiger will go on feeling drowsy and then will not eat and will die. Or the tiger will go on running as if his body is on fire. Or the tiger will go on feeling ticklish. So people were saying, it's very, very important for the tiger charmer to cut the charm. Otherwise, we're jeopardizing, tigers' lives. And so they said, yeah, we're the first ones to get off the boat. We're the last ones to get in. And the tigers see us as another tiger. So yeah, this is why we are killed. So it was very interesting because it wasn't the simple story of just people being superstitious, but it was a more complicated story of basically tiger charmers taking on the role of tigers and seeing tigers as, kind of adversaries that were equal to them, that were as important as us humans. The other thing that happened, as I was telling you, I was in class 8. I went in 88, just before the huge big cyclone that happened, that killed many, many people. So 2 weeks before that cyclone, I had gone with my school to the Sundarban. And we had gone to the Sajnikhalli guest house. And we had had a lot of talks by scientists on the Sundarban. And you know that what is unique about Sundarban tigers is that they don't need to be old or physically challenged to actually kill humans. You know, Bernier, a French traveler in the 17th century, talks about his travels through India and talks about passing by the Sunderbans and says that everybody told him that if a tiger came, he would be the one killed because he was the fattest amongst them. So tigers usually go for the fattest person. And remember that story where I told you about, well, I'll get back to that story first. But when, so people, these scientists were trying to find out why it is that in the Sundarban, young tigers, you know, kill people. And so they said that it was perhaps because twice a day, the tide inundated, you know, the whole place and the forest got covered. And as you might know, tigers usually urinate around their peripheries to demarcate their space. But when that gets washed off twice a day, you don't perhaps have a sense of this is my territory, right? That is one reason. Another reason was that this was a brackish place. Everything is salty. And so they need human flesh for dietary balance. Okay, this was what some scientists were telling us. So you have a lot of writings in the 1980s about why the Sundarban tigers are more prone to killing humans than tigers elsewhere in the Kumaon or elsewhere. And you know why there are still tigers in the Sundarban, right? The British couldn't go and hunt them because usually they went on elephant backs. You can't take an elephant to the Sundarban, right? You'll see how it is. You can't really. So this is why the tigers thankfully got protected there. But so what the government had started doing was build freshwater ponds inside the forest so that tigers could have fresh water. They were trying to see. They also left gur, you know, jaggery in some places to sweeten the tiger's nature. And they had started distributing masks to people saying, the tiger always attacks from the back. Usually it attacks and it just turns down, breaks your vertebral column by turning your head. And so if you wore a mask at the back of the head, it would perhaps puzzle the tiger and he would not attack, or she, you know, anyway. It's an inclusive he here. So they had just started the scheme of distributing masks to the islanders. And they said it wasn't working, and there were still a lot of people, officially around 25, unofficially more like 100 people killed per year. They said people are very superstitious and they don't want to wear them, and this was why there were still as many tigers killing people. And I remember going down, getting up very early the next morning, and with my friend, we went to see the guards and said, can we get a couple of those masks? We want to go inside the forest. And they were like, no, those masks are only for the islanders, not for you. And we're like, no, we're not superstitious, we'll wear them. And they refused to give us those masks. And they said, no, those are not for you. And so in my head, I wondered why something called scientific would work for the islanders, but not for us, right? And so at the back of my head, I always wanted to return to ask people why they refused to wear the masks, you know, what was their rationale? And they kept saying, if the masks work. So when I returned, that was one of the first questions I asked. They said, why don't the forest guards wear masks? Why do they go around with a rifle? Why, when Jyoti Basu came, did they and a couple of guards got killed when he went? Why why don't they wear masks? Why didn't he wear a mask when he went into the forest? So that remained with me. So the only way, people said, you can be sure of not getting killed by a tiger is to have a pure heart and empty hands. So what does that mean? That means that you should have no land. You should be a landless person. You should have no jobs. You should not be working at an NGO or have something. You should also basically have no firearms. Empty hands means no firearms, no mischievous thoughts about tigers and the forest. And only if you went inside with a pure heart and empty hands could you be safe. Okay. So this is what was surprised. So when I got off that boat, and she told me, get back in, and I did, and we had enough wood. We started to travel back. That's the photo with this photo where you see the wood being taken off the boat. I was on the boat with those guys. Okay, you see the photo at the bottom on the right. So basically, so I said, I told my host, I told her, I am pure-hearted. I am empty-handed. I don't have rifles. Why do you think I would have been killed? According to your own beliefs about this how it works. And she said, you have enough photos. You have enough. Writings about, why are you tempting the tiger? So this idea of, having enough. It's true, I had been to the forest a couple of times before. I had taken photos. So she's like, there's no need to tempt the tiger. There's no need to be greedy. You were greedy here. You could take photos from inside the boat. Why did you have to get off? Because apart from the tigers, you could have been taken off by a crocodile. and she lived with people getting killed every other day by either a crocodile or a tiger. Sorry. And in those days, there were no towers, right? No mobile phones. So nobody knew in Calcutta when somebody was killed by a tiger. You sometimes heard it. It sometimes came up in the newspaper, but most of the time it didn't. And it never came up when it was a woman killed by a crocodile, for example, because women were the ones pulling the nets to catch the tiny tiger, tiger prawn fry. To sort of sell and then grow or cultivate in a bigger tank, right? In those saltwater tanks along the river. So this was something that it was made real to me when I myself had gone there, and I realized to what extent they have really internalized the story about greed and not taking more. And so it is part of a larger story. And the story of the Bonbibi Johoranama, this book that is read out during the Bonbibi festival, is that there once was a sage. Actually, he was a Brahmin sage that suddenly went completely crazy. He decided that he wanted to eat human flesh. And for that, he took on the form of a tiger. And he started he took on the form of a tiger and started attacking people. And he decided to make all of the animals in the forest into his slaves. So the ghosts, the spirits, the monkeys, everybody became his slaves, and he started attacking them. But then one day, Allah, in his compassion, decided to send this young woman. And that's another story that is very interesting. Her father had abandoned her mother because she couldn't have children. And the mother was actually pregnant with twins, a little girl called Bon Bibi and a little boy called Shah Jangali. And basically, she does not think she will have enough milk or resources to feed the two children. So she abandons the little baby girl and keeps the boy, and the girl is raised by a deer. And so it is this little girl raised in the forest by a deer that Allah chooses to go to the land of the 18 tides and basically tell the tiger to stop killing people. And so she first goes to Mecca and Medina and takes some sacred earth and Fatima's blessings to come back no, not to come back, she wasn't from that place, to go to the land of the 18 tides, which is another name for the Sunderbans. And so she, her brother decides to come along, and they reach, and she, it's a long, interesting story where basically the tiger resents their intrusion and decides to fight them. But the tiger's mother, called Narayani, says that, if you lose to a woman, it'll look bad, so let me go and fight her. And Narayani goes and fights with Bon Bibi, and then decides to call her friend to stop the fight when she sees she is losing. And Bon Bibi says, fine, let's divide the forest and let's get a few rules. So people are not supposed to take anything from the forest if they own anything, if they have other ways of making a livelihood. And your son is not to kill them when they come with a pure heart and empty hands. And Narayani agrees to it. Dokhin Rai is very angry. He goes to see his friend, the Pir Bara Ghazi Khan, and says, this is wrong, because in the meantime, what has happened is that he has attacked another human, and it's a little boy called Dukhe, which means sadness. And Bon Bibi's brother comes and runs after him with a gada. And so he runs off to his friend, Pir Bara Ghazi Khan, and tells the Pir, who are these people? Do something about it. They can't be. And so the Pir says, actually, she's a good woman. You should go and ask forgiveness. And so Dokhin Rai goes to Bon Bibi and says, I'm sorry, and can I be your son? And she says, I've just adopted this little boy as my son. And if I adopt you as my son too, you two are brothers. And therefore you have responsibility towards each other. And so there's a long list of rules where humans can't go into the forest, as I said, if they own something or if they have possessions. And tigers are not to kill anybody that does not enter the forest with a pure heart and empty hands. So people routinely said tigers rarely attack crab collectors, but crab collectors don't get off their boats. So, but if a crab collector has beaten up his wife or has, been too greedy and all of that, yes, he might get killed. They also said that the reason why woodcutters and honey collectors get killed, not only because they get off, and actually walk on the forest land, which is very, very dangerous, but the reason why these people get killed is that, sorry, I'm blanking out, is because they take more than they need to. And they attack, they take the tiger's wood. That is something that the tiger does not want to part with. So this is why it's important to always take the wood that has been discarded, but not take new trees, not chop down trees and all of that. And you can take honey, but you have to be careful of leaving some and all of that. So there are all these rules about entering the forest. And in my naivety, once I met a man who everybody told me, he goes to the forest a lot. He's a big poacher. And I was new, so I said, oh, you must have a very big murti or an image of Bon Bibi in your backyard. And he says, Bon Bibi, she's good for the fishermen. I need Kali, Ma Kali. Kali is the one that protects taxi drivers, dacoits, policemen. I have a big Kali Murti, because Bon Bibi is not good for us who are going into the forest with firearms. Okay, so it was interesting to see how Bon Bibi wasn't considered powerful enough by poachers. And you're going to see now Bon Bibi has become hip you're going to see them in government offices and all of that. But when I used to go to the government offices in the 80s, there was Ma Kali that was there and not Bon Bibi at all, because she was called a Muslim goddess. And when I went to Muslim villages and families in West Bengal and Bangladesh, they had venerations of Bon Bibi, and I don't call it worship, I call it veneration to make a distinction, because they themselves said, just as we venerate our peers and we have dargahs where we put flowers and incense sticks and have songs, to honor our peers, in the same way we honor our parents, in that way we honor Bon Bibi, but we don't worship her. So this distinction seemed important. And so both sides are very uncomfortable about this deity. But now what a lot of Hindus have done is to, it's become, as I was saying, hip in West Bengal. So when I went there in the late 90s, it was still, it's a Muslim goddess. How can we worship her? You guys should become proper Hindus and go to Mayapur and, become proper Vaishnavites. What are you doing? Today, it is seen as okay. She is one of the goddesses that is worshipped and all of that. So, so what I got interested in as an anthropologist is how those who live in the forest, mainly fishers, how do they perceive social relations, both with each other and with, so I don't want to take too much time. I've just spent an hour. Do I have 5 more minutes, or shall I quickly wrap up?
5 minutes is fine, no problem.
Yeah. So, sorry. So how do they perceive social relations, both with non-humans as well as with other groups of humans? So, caste relations, right? This is what everybody studies when we go to, on any part of South Asia. It becomes really important to know how different communities interact with each other. Now, in the Sunderbans, it was, 95% either Muslims, SCs, or STs, okay? So everybody here was somebody, that considered themselves some sort of lower caste. What I found very, very interesting, as I was telling you, anybody making money left the place, okay? The other thing that I noticed was how they made a distinction between those who were landowners. Very often they're, their relatives, their uncle and all of that, versus those who were fishers. And now there was a distinction between the two. And a lot of very, very bloody fights between the two, because fishers, with the coming of tiger prawn on the market in the 80s, 70s in Bangladesh, but 80s in West Bengal, they actually, even the late 70s, they started building fisheries, right, along the river edges. But these fisheries were saltwater and therefore contaminated the fields of landowners, right? So nobody wanted these fisheries. But what happened was every time there was a breach in the mud wall, saltwater would come in and you couldn't do anything about that. So sometimes people did create breaches so that, their land could get flooded and they could convert it into a fishery. as opposed to keeping it. So there are always fights between, the people who want to keep the land free of any salt ingress and others who want to make a living by having fisheries. So these are the two things. And a region that is very mixed. O'Malley, one of the gazetteers working on Bengal, was surprised how some years on the census, people would say they are Muslim, then 10 years later, they would say they are Hindu, and then they would shift, and vice versa, So basically, people did a lot of things and they didn't necessarily know what they were. And when I was there, a lot of Hindu kids, because I was also working at the local school, had names like Ghazi and Zorina and Johura, and which is Zora. And the school teachers said, when they reach, if they go up until class 8 or 9, and we see that they're good enough to sit for the board exam, we'll give them a good Hindu name, because their parents were so ignorant, they didn't know this was a Muslim name. So there was, when I was there, a growing like, no, you guys, this is not proper Hinduism. You shouldn't be doing these things, and you shouldn't be giving these names to your kids. There was like but it was interesting to see how, 100 years before my arrival, like O'Malley was writing about how people didn't know what they were, and kept shifting. Yeah, this whole thing about tigers are brothers, and this is why I call them non-humans, because when you talk about animal, you think of these creatures in a Judeo-Christian way, where you see humans as superior to animals, right? Whereas a non-human is a lot more flexible. Basically the whole idea was that here tigers didn't need to be protected, because they could protect themselves. They were smart enough to, because there wasn't this very condescending attitude that we have, right? Protect nature, save nature. And it comes from a feeling of us being superior and us needing to save nature, that the fact that nature can't save herself. And these people were like, who are us? Who are we to save nature? Nature, is saving us. And it's a relationship where there's nobody on top, nobody needing to protect, because, it's a very symbiotic kind of life. And so Bon Bibi was seen as bringing some sort of truce between humans and tigers. And islanders felt that they were tied to tigers in some sort of complicity, mediated by, Allah. And so at the end of the Bon Bibi, celebration, they say things like, La ilaha illallah, there is no other God but Allah. And then they say, Horir name Hori bol, so everybody says Hori bol. So it's interesting, this this kind of veneration of this superpower called Bon Bibi. I don't want to call her a goddess, because she's a goddess for Hindus but not for the Muslims. So and so these are some of the images. And see, she looks increasingly like a Hindu goddess. And this is little Dukhe she's pulling. Next to her, you have her brother Shah Janguli. So people commission different images of her. And the book, which is written in Bengali is written like English from left to right, but the book starts from what we would call the end, to emulate an Arabic book. Okay? And this is the book that is read out during her veneration, her worship. Okay. So there are a lot of stories of peers and tigers, and this is what I'm working on now. So this was in Bangladesh, people taking the Bon Bibi towards the forest where there was a shrine, and people give, so she's completely vegetarian. People gift her live chicks, which they release in the forest, and fruits and vegetables. Mainly fruits and sweets. And this was I think these images are from, two of them are from West Bengal. And the one with the blue sari and the red sari are in Bangladesh. So this is also another image of Bangladesh. So people don't pull in money to make a big image of her. All those who go to the forest buy an image of her, and then like they put 20 images together and worship all of them by, with one person, because they don't necessarily know how to read, and it's a long process. So there's one person reading out the book. And so this is how there are many I got interested in how people interact with animals in other parts of Bengal, and there is this very interesting Bayezid Bostami shrine in Chittagong in Bangladesh, and it's considered a magical pond. And you have these turtles that are otherwise extinct in the wild that still exist in this pond. And you have another pond which is in Assam, in next to one of the Kali temples, and you have these same turtles there. And so people feed these turtles little bits of banana or meat or bread, and they pat their heads, and it's considered to bring you blessings. So I look at all of these interactions that people have across Asia, but mainly in Bengal with non-humans. So yeah, the book that talks about the Ghazi and the tiger, that initial story is 1684, but the Bon Bibi story is only about 250 years old. It's not a very old story. You have mention of an atlas and a compass in that story. So this is the book I wrote. I have the PDF if people are interested, and I can send it to you. Thank you so much. I've since been working on non-humans, and these are some of the things that I've been working on recently. So I shall now take questions if you have time.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Annu. Wow.
Yeah,
there's so much to absorb at this point in time that I wouldn't even dare to try and say what I had actually. But what I really liked was the way you described the tigers as being cantankerous. I think that makes the tiger more human than all of us. That single word, that's what's staying with me. All right, okay. Now, let's see if there are questions. No, I think.
Should I just ask the question, Vijay?
Yeah, okay.
Hi, Annu, I'm Ambika. Thoroughly enthralled by your talk just now. So you're saying that there is no kind of killing or attempt to kill the tigers by the islanders?
See, traditionally, people have not wanted to kill the tiger at all.
Right.
It's not like China that exterminated its elephants and tigers 1,000 years ago by calling them pests and vermin. In South Asia, most people have cohabited with elephants and tigers and lions and snakes and all of that. You don't have, but today there are poachers, yes, because it's lucrative, right? And usually the poachers are, with the government officials. Like, I shouldn't say this openly, but where do you have the kind of money to buy firearms and to be able to mount an expedition to the forest and do this, right? So local people are not into it at all. It's mainly a new, it's this new thing that, yeah, you can get a lot of money. So, but there has been no tradition of killing tigers.
Amazing, because you're saying that they don't even like set traps for them or try to, in order to protect themselves, they are not trying this. Amazing.
But this is the South Asian ethos, right, around non-humans. There hasn't been in Singapore, that Singapore is the only Asian city with no crows. Why? They cull crows. They've killed millions of crows. Okay, it started in the 70s, and they basically destroy any nest or kill any crow. And it's the only Asian city where you will not see a single crow. But there's a lot of culling happening right behind it. Here we have monkeys and we have dogs and we have all kinds of creatures, but there isn't really this urge to cull, right, or to kill. It's very interesting. So this is what I'm working on. I'm looking at a comparative kind of study between China and Asia and South Asia in relation to how non-humans are thought of. And I think it's very, very different.
Thank you.
Yeah, somebody wanted to respond. Aparna, what is it that you would like to say?
Yes. Actually, it's more of like a comment and a response rather than a question. Because for me, your talk brought together a whole lot of things that I have been reading, personally. And I come from a literature background. So, and Amitav Ghosh is a favorite kind of a writer. And this thing about the interaction between humans and non-humans, Eastern Kair, she too has a very a secret river or something like that, has a very, very interesting story about her people and how the protagonist in that story, he too turns into a tiger. and he has his adventure. It is a liminal story at the cusp of human world and the spirit world and the animal world. And he does briefly turn into a tiger. He has to do whatever he needs to do. And he comes back, becomes a human again, has a family. And because his work is done or whatever, he again leaves. Disappears into the spirit world or whatever.
What is the name of this book? Sorry.
Secret River or some such. I'll maybe put it on the group or something. I'll
Thank you.
Recall that. So these practices and these belief systems in more ways than one are like you mentioned South Asia, but I think with populations of people who live very, very closely with nature, I think that distinction becomes very amorphous. The spirit, animal, human world. Venkatesh, my husband, had been to Agumbe a few years ago, and he was told exactly the same thing. If you need to see the king, you go in humbly, and we don't want to shoot the king. We don't want to capture the king. We have no other ulterior motives. We just want to see the king. But even to see the king, you have to go in with a pure heart and a humble mind. So these things are there in our sort of approach to the world around us. And I think sometimes it gets highlighted. And what I find very, very interesting about this Born Baby story is that it brings in, it's a story, right? You think of it as myth or legend or whatever you want to call it, but then it encapsulates a lot of history. There is, it's a way of talking about the influence of the Islamic empire that was there in Delhi or whatever, on this very natural and it's a terrain that is so difficult to live in with for humans. It's very difficult. And there are coping mechanisms, and the story becomes a way to kind of psychologically come to terms with your, surroundings.
Yes.
That's one thing. And the other thing you were mentioning about Born Baby and, bringing the mud from Mecca and all that. In India, we too have this tradition of, taking the water from the Ganga to Rameshwaram, taking mud from Rameshwaram to the Ganga. So to me, that Born Baby it's just like an amalgamation of all these several strands of our a cultural memory, so to say.
Yes. I think Jehan had a question.
Yes.
Okay, you can show yourself if you want. What's your question?
When you said those animals that live there, you said the deer, the crab, and you forgot. There was a picture of a crocodile. You forgot to say the crocodile.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay. Anything else?
No.
Okay. Anybody else?
Did you get to see, hello, this is Kalpana. Did you get to see the tiger finally? I mean, like many times or not at all, or what? How was it?
Not when I was living there, and I was happy not to see it because I could hear it. The hut where I lived was just opposite the forest. There was just a small river between the two, so I could hear the tiger at night, and it was quite frightening. But they kept saying you shouldn't want to see it because it's the last time you see anything. So yeah, I didn't try to see it when I was there. Later on I saw, but not then. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Ramanan has a quick question. He's talking about the anthropological view of the Sunderbans that you described, and wanted to know, is born baby restricted only to that region?
It's restricted to the entire Sundarban region, both in Bangladesh and West Bengal.
That's what it is. All right, okay, that's about all. I think unless
I got the name of the novel by Stephen Kyde. It's Where the River Sleeps.
Where the River Sleeps.
yeah, okay.
And who is it by?
Stephen Kyde.
Okay. Thank you.
K-I-R-E. That's how she spells. She's a Naga writer.
Okay. Okay.
All right, so once again, thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
It was fantastic, to say the least. And if you do desire, kindly stay back for the rest of the meeting because we're going to have something fun. I'm sure Jan will also love it. Yeah.
I'll tell him. So tell me, when are you going to the Sundarban?
We are going to leaving on the 9th of January and we are there till the 15th. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah. We hope so. We will keep in mind everything that you said and look out for the right things other than just, seeing and we hope to also, try and make a list of all the flora there, which should be interesting. I do not know how much of it we'll be able to do because we'll be on the boat most of the time, excepting 2 towers because the forest department now restricts, you cannot really get off. And we really hope that when we get off or when we go there near the watchtowers, I hope it is low tide so that we'll be able to get off. Otherwise, we won't be able to do that also. Let's hope. We'll come back and I'll let you know how it went.
Yeah, you'll be able to get off if it's high tide.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Sorry. When it's high, yeah. Only then we'll be able to get off. Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so very much.
Thanks.
Yeah. Now, quickly moving on, I have there's this wonderful thing that we have started. Again, we were looking at I think everything that gets started in the MNS, there's always some there's a genesis to it, and the genesis to the frog survey that is going on. It is one was the weather, the other was this gentle nudge that Dr. Susi had written about and saying that it would be good to quickly take stock of what's around us. And so thinking about it, we already had some amount of, what shall I say, baseline data, which Vikas, you and Rohit and Mahati had collected over the last 2-3 years, which is posted in their Biodiversity of Chennai project on iNaturalist. And so we thought, well, since we have baseline data, which shows that there are 12 species of frogs in Greater Chennai, and the work that they did finally emerged in the poster that you have in your hands, and so we said, well, let's look at it. needed somebody to lead, and it didn't take Sagarika more than half a minute to say yes. And she quickly said, yes, definitely, we should do this. And so very happy. Thanks to Dr. Susie, we got this started, and grateful to Sagarika, who said yes very quickly. And so our project is on. Sagarika will tell you the rest of, we'll give you data on how many postings we have had and take you through this very interesting activity. So if you do not have your pen and paper ready, quickly grab pen and paper. Sagarika, on to you.
Yeah, thank you, Vijay, on this. So yeah, it was one early morning call from Vijay. I think it was a Saturday that we need to start Frog Atlas and all that, and we quickly jumped into it. We started or launched it around, I think, first week of around 10th and 11th of November. That was the last when we had good rains. And yeah, so after that, there has been a slightly, the rains were not much, and the frog inputs or the data was also very slow. It has just jumped in last one and a half day. We really got some good numbers, but we're still around 50 postings till now. I mean, looking at the data, it's all mostly coming from areas around IIT or areas around marsh where we know wetlands are present. Those are the places where we are currently seeing the data. But obviously, the first request to everyone is please share to as many people in Chennai you can the Google form that is there in the WhatsApp as well as in Insta and other social media platforms. So that's the first step, that please share so that we get more numbers and we have more robust data to analyze it. Now going to the purpose of this meeting or talk is to take you through the calls of the 12 species of frogs that are most commonly found. Now with rains, you will see frogs vocalizing more often than not. So I'll just quickly go start on that bit. Okay, so during night, you will see a lot of creatures who are vocalizing. So not only frogs, there will be other insects as well. So the reasons can be varied. I mean, it is beyond only territory or mating. They call for just for the heck of it, like they want to be heard. When it comes to frog calls, I mean, I came to know it very recently. I'm not sure how many of you know about it, but they do have, what we call as spectral separation. So because there are so many calls that are happening, they will have a band of frequencies which a specific species of frog adhere to. And they will not move beyond that spectral frequency. So it is more or less like the radio frequencies that we have, one particular channel playing in one frequency, it will not interfere with other thing. And they will also accommodate. So if one frog is calling at that point of time, the other frog will pause. So they will have their timing as well, synchronized with the other calls that are happening or other noises that are happening. That is another thing. And they also have different tempo. So they maintain different tempos so that the species can be distinguished from the other. So whosoever is listening to them, if it is for mate, the mate recognizes one, obviously the type of the call and also the tempo to indicate what it is the call means. So there's a lot of research that is going on how frogs communicate. And this were the 3 interesting aspects I thought I'll just share with you before we go into the calls. What I'll do is I'll take you through all the 12 calls. Before I take you through all the 12 calls, I need your pen and paper. And this is the table that I would, okay, can I share?
Yeah. I'm here. I'll have to just give me a half second. Let's do it. Where are you now? There you are. Yeah. Okay, I have made you a co-host. Yeah, you can now share. Yeah, you can now share, I think.
Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
So when so these are the 3 heads that I want. So when I'm playing a frog call, so What does it sound like? So that's the first thing. So it could be adjectives like, it's repeated calls, or it's sweet call, or, quite an ugly call, whatever that helps you remember that call, or a comparison that it is calling like a goat, or it's calling like a sheep, or it is like a horse, anything. So anything that helps you to make connect and help you remember that call. What are the words that you're hearing in that call? So katkata, jarjada, badbada, boom, whatever that it is, that, that is your own way of describing that call, and obviously the species. So the purpose is that so that that helps you to make connections with known things and remember the call when you hear it later, and recall it. So I'll just leave it here for some time. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first call, just tell me if you can hear me.
Dataphrynus melanostictus.
Is it audible?
Yep.
Yeah. So this is the first one. This is Dataphrynus melanostictus.
Common name.
Common name. Okay. Just a second. Asian common toad.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah.
Dataphrynus melanostictus. Common Indian toad.
Common Indian.
Should I play it again?
Yeah, I think everybody should, what you're trying to say, try and put
The three aspects, the three aspects, try to, associate it in those columns. I'll just play this one again.
Dataphrynus melanostictus. Common Indian toad. Dataphrynus melanostictus.
Okay, going to the next one.
Polypedatus maculatus. Common tree frog.
This is that gada gada sound that is coming. That's the one. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The third one. Green pond frog. Sri Lankan bullfrog.
Sri Lankan balloon frog.
Going to the next one.
Common skittering frog.
Okay, the next one. Can you hear?
No, ma'am.
Now, was it audible? Okay, so it's marble balloon frog.
Operodon variegatus, variegated balloon frog.
This is the frog I hear the most from my balcony. So this is the call that I hear. The next one is Indian bullfrog.
Indian bullfrog.
Jordan's bullfrog. So this does remind me of one particular animal. I am not sure what others, but yeah. The next one, Indian burrowing frog. Indian cricket frog. I think this call was also recently shared in the WhatsApp group. So I think that's one thing that I did. The last one, ornamented pygmy frog. Okay. So all 12 we have heard. Now can I play and you will try to identify them based on your associations with these calls? I'll randomly play and people can raise hands like that yellow hand or whatever, and then we will say. Please don't type it on the text box or the message box, please. Okay, I'll start with the easy one. Okay, Loganathan.
It's Jordan Bullfrog.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes, it is. Very good. Okay, so the next one.
This is very easy.
No one?
Well, I can tell you what it is. Yeah. Oh, so
Yes, Sudhir. Common skittering frog? Yes.
Yes.
Yes, Bhuvanya.
Good.
Good, good.
Good. Nice.
Anyone? Oh my God, where? Usha.
The Sri Lankan bullfrog.
Yes. Nice. Okay, the next one. Sorry, no hands?
I don't think anybody heard it. I think there was a disturbance. Play it again.
Still no hands? Okay, so I'll just tell this one. This one is the green.
Loganathan is.
Oh, yeah,
Yes,
Logan.
green pond frog.
Yeah, it's a green one. Thank you.
So we have a frog expert amongst us, huh? Loganathan. Nice.
Okay, the next one. Dr. Anita?
Yeah, is it common tree frog?
Yes, it is common tree frog. Great. So, okay, now I don't remember which one I have. Okay, this one.
Yeah, Dr. Annu has raised her hands.
Yes, Dr. Anu.
Is it the Indian bullfrog?
It is the Indian burrowing frog.
Oh.
Good.
Good,
try.
good.
Good try, Jay. Right.
Okay.
Microhyla
sorry.
ornata.
Sorry. Sudhar, Bhavanya.
Indian cricket frog?
Yes. Anyone? Okay, I'll wait for someone else apart from Loganathan. Okay, Loganathan.
Can you play that again?
Yeah, sure. Yes, Loganathan?
Ornamented.
Yeah. So it was ornamented pygmy frog, Microhyla ornata.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. It's good.
Yeah. I think I've done most of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you're good.
Yeah, we're
People
good.
are able to recognize it. That's nice. So please listen to these calls that you are hearing at night. Update it as much as possible. Share it with friends, schoolmates, whosoever is around Chennai, so that they can update it. And the poster that I have shared, which has the calls, actually all these 12 calls are there, and they are easily downloadable, easy to hear. Just scan the code and just go ahead and listen to them as often as possible. gives a good idea of what is which call. And thanks. I will look forward to more and more inputs from your side on this.
Thank you, Sagarika. Thank you very, very much. Yeah. Very quickly before we wind up, just like to remind, it's there in the bulletin. So in the month of January, we have the AWC happening, and to help us to understand all the different birding spots in Greater Chennai, Syed has compiled, that has also been shared with you, about 105 sub spots which are there. Very, very grateful to Syed for having taken the trouble of doing it. He has not only listed them, he's also given you the coordinates as well as the Google map link. So now you have no excuse not to be visiting all the 105. And we'll of course be doing it in teams as quickly as possible. We'll put the teams together and let you know. And finally, on the 28th of January is the HSBC Chennai bird race happening. Bhuvanya and Sudhar will be helping us on this front. So we'll start the registration sometime beginning of Jan. And we hope this time to have, it's going to be open to the public. And so spread that message again. Again, there are a lot of new places where you can go and bird, new things, new data that can be collected and shared with everybody. And so looking forward to January. And before we conclude, I would like to tell everybody that MNS has successfully completed 44 years of existence this month, and we are marching on to our 45th. Thank you all once again for being here. Thank you, Dr. Annu. Thank you, Sagarika. And wish all of you a great Sunday. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you.
Can you share all the audios of the frogs? Somebody's asking. Ambika is asking. It's there. Ambika is there on that poster. You just have to. Can't hear you.
Is there on the poster, Ambika?
It's there.
Yeah. On the poster, we have to do something. Yeah, you have to go.
Oh, you don't want a poster? Okay, I'll send it to you.
Just send us a simple way. That's all.
Okay, I'll send it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
You can send this, if you can, kindly send this to the WhatsApp group, and also, also email to the Google group so that everybody has it. Huh? All right. Okay.
Sure. I'll do that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Enjoy the rest of the day, all of you.